So we wrapped up 48 hours in Iceland here, but I really hope you guys enjoyed this type of video. I've been making videos for about 10 years now, and after reviewing smartphones so many times, I figured it'd be really interesting to do something a little bit different. So if you guys enjoy videos like this, make sure you go ahead and drop a thumbs up, because I'm definitely down to do these crazy ideas in the future where we bring the smartphone somewhere completely random or a place that I haven't visited before and take some photos and experience that through a product. So from the spec side of things, let's break it down. The main camera on the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max features a 48 megapixel sensor that features a sensor size that is 65% larger than the previous generation. The aperture is an f1.78, which is a little bit higher than the f1.5 in the previous generation, but it does have a larger sensor, and the low light performance is claimed to be 2 times better thanks to the hardware elements and also the photonic engine, which we're going to talk a little bit more about later. The 0.5 angle ultra wide camera, on the other hand, has a 3x improvement in low light performance. It features an f2.2 aperture, and I'm really interested to see how well that is able to perform because it is a camera that I use quite a bit. The 3x camera, on the other hand, features the same hardware as the previous generation at a 12 megapixel resolution, just like the 0.5 megapixel camera, but it also gains a 2x improvement on low light images thanks to the photonic engine as well. One feature to also note is that because the main camera of the iPhone is 48 megapixels, they've added a new focal length, which is 2x. It utilizes a portion of that 48 megapixel sensor and captures a 12 megapixel image with no loss of quality or resolution, because it is actually just cropping in on the sensor as well, which is nice to be able to have 4 professional focal lengths, because sensor cropping is actually something that we do on our cinema cameras all the time. So when it comes to talking about cameras, there's always the megapixel debate and how it doesn't really matter when it comes to actual image quality. When you take a normal photo, it is 12 megapixels. However, if you want to have it in ProRAW, it can actually take a photo in up to 48 megapixels. And this is something that I use in both aspects. Most of the time, I'll just take a typical photo so I don't take up too much space on the device. But at the same time, right now, we're taking a look at just a lot of detail behind us. And I feel like it's a good way to be able to take this 48 megapixel photo and crop into it anytime. Taking a 48 megapixel photo makes a lot of sense. There's so many ways that you can customize the photo exactly the way that you would like. So in this scenario right here, we're actually going to be testing out different focal lengths, including the 0.5, which you can see captures the rocks along the end there, as well as the 1x, maybe taking a raw photo as well, so that we can go ahead and see how the cropped in looks at the 48 megapixels. But we can also utilize the 2x lens, which is actually just a sensor crop of the 48 megapixel main sensor taking a 12 megapixel image. So by having 4 different professional focal lengths, it's really versatile when it comes to trying to pick what type of photo that you want in a given situation. So let's go ahead and open some of the photos right here and talk about what I've noticed. I think what I noticed, especially with the raw images, is that obviously there's an incredible amount of detail. As I zoom into all these rocks, you can just see the sharpness that this resolution is able to provide. But more importantly, I know some people did talk about how the iPhone camera on the 14 has quite a bit of sharpening and noise reduction applied. And I find that that is less prominent in these raw images. But as you scroll through the other ones here, I also noticed in this one where there's a lot of lights and darks, I look at the amount of detail that is retained within the rocks. It is a really fun camera to use, and I can totally see us using this in conjunction with our Leica Q2 for certain images to be captured on the iPhone alone, and chances are, in some scenarios, you guys won't even notice. From a practical standpoint though, is it really going to matter and is it going to make a difference? And the simple answer to that is, I mean, not really. I think it really comes down to what your profession is, what you plan to use the photos for, and how often you plan to use it. But as someone who does take photos casually, but isn't really a professional photographer, I really enjoy it, and I can see us using it a lot more in the future, especially in well-lit situations. One thing to note though is when you first get your phone, you can actually go into the camera mode settings and set the ProRAW to be in 12 megapixel or in 48 megapixels, but keep in mind the 48 megapixel photos will take up just under 80 megabytes each. So if you take a ton of photos, or you maybe have a lower storage option of an iPhone, then you do want to keep that in mind. And so I find that I'm relatively selective in terms of which photos I take in the full 48 megapixels, because a lot of them I just post on Instagram stories, and occasionally there's a few that I'm going to crop in on and actually go ahead and edit in the ProRAW. And when it comes to video, it has been a really fun experience as well. The cinematic mode now records in 4K video, but one thing that we also really want to test out this trip as we explore around and also film the car is action mode. Having stabilized video on a smartphone is always something that I like to test because a lot of companies make some crazy claims. This phone is able to record a 2.8K resolution action mode, and Apple's stabilization has simply been one of the best in the market over the past few years. We definitely didn't go easy on the testing. We ran around and just chased cars and people with these phones, and what was really impressive is in the specific clip of the Range Rover driving along the countryside in Iceland, we were actually on a 45-degree slope in rough terrain, and there wasn't really a horizon line for it to be able to lock onto, yet it was able to get that gimbal effect. So in comparison to the iPhone 14 with it disabled, I found that the stabilization on the iPhone 14's video mode was already pretty good. But if you come from an iPhone before that, then the difference is going to be night and day. One of the most exciting things about the cinematic mode for someone who records a ton of video is the fact that it's able to record at a 4K resolution now. That is something that you couldn't do before, and for anyone who is in a cinematography and wants to capture some element of professional video or a filler clip, having that 4K capability is important, and the autofocus and tracking is able to do a better job. The iPhone 14 Pro in particular has a 2x improvement in terms of low light images in the main camera, 3x on the ultra wide, and 2x on the 3x telephoto, and that is all thanks to the photonic engine. Essentially what the photonic engine means is that it is an image processing pipeline where Apple combines multiple photos, if not dozens of photos, and combines the best elements of each one to give you the best end result. This in combination with the pixel binning technology of the 4:1 ratio that outputs a 12 megapixel photo is able to give you a very strong image when you're just snapping a picture very quickly, but at the same time, it definitely brings the most benefit to low light performance. What's unique about the photonic engine is that it goes all the way back along that image pipeline to the uncompressed 48 megapixel photo and brings all of that raw data capable from that larger sensor to contribute to the data that it needs to give you the best output. I mean, the results speak for themselves. As someone who uses an iPhone as a daily phone, I knew the iPhone 14 Pro's video and photo capability was going to be really good. But I think where it really stood out was last night, the Northern Lights, seeing it be able to capture at a 3-second exposure and how it was able to utilize its low light potential was one where we saw a pretty decent amount of improvement from the previous generations. And when it comes to the video recording as well, low light video is also slightly better. So honestly, one of my favorite improvements of the iPhone 14 Pro and 14 Pro Max is that the display now reaches a max brightness of 2000 nits. So if you're out and about in a bright and sunny place, just trying to see your screen and use your phone, or specifically if you're recording photos or videos, you can now see your screen a little bit better. I know this is something that other smartphones have implemented in the past, but it is nice that the iPhone now has a brighter display, and in HDR it is also able to reach up to 1600 nits, which is same as what you get in the Pro Display XDR. I would say if you're coming from last year's smartphone, you don't really need to go ahead and buy a brand new phone right away. However, if you're someone who records all of your photos or videos on a phone, you can really benefit from some of the features, including the 48 megapixel Pro RAW, which in this case, especially when visiting the geothermal terrains, was absolutely incredible to be able to have a large, high resolution photo that I can go back and edit and print at a larger scale at any time. So I think for our uses, and as someone who records thousands of photos and videos on the iPhone every single year, I'm really excited to continue using this device. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching this Iceland video. It was a crazy one that we went out for 48 hours, got it filmed and came back. And I hope you guys enjoyed the style like this. If you want us to do more crazy stuff like this in the future, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll see you all in the next one.